I'm going to come and join you there, Larry. So let's get going. We've got some really great content this morning. We're going to start with Larry Taylor. He's St. Louis-based board member at Yield Lab Institute and co-founder at Yield Lab Asia Pacific. He has 40 plus years of experience establishing agricultural and technological businesses in Asian markets. Larry was previously founder, president, and principal consultant at Asiatics, which he ran for 20 years, providing local insight to international companies. Before that, he had a 20-year career with Monsanto Ag, primarily in Asian markets. We're noticing an Asian theme. Larry was also an adjunct professor of Asian business at St. Louis University and has a degree in agriculture and economics from Cornell University. Larry, thanks for joining us this morning.
Happy to be here. Nice to see you all.
Okay, let's start out by saying the Yield Lab, not the Yield Lab Institute, but the Yield Lab is a global network of venture capital firms that started in St. Louis in 2014. It invests in early stage ag tech companies and has made more than 90 investments in startups around the world. Now to the Institute. Yield Lab team members formed Yield Lab Institute 3 years after Yield Lab was formed in 2017 to spur agri-food entrepreneurship and they formed it as a nonprofit outside of a venture capital model. Larry, tell us about how the Institute achieves its goal, this agri-food entrepreneurship goal.
Sure. Thank you all for your interest in the Yield Lab Institute. I think we have a common approach here, all of us around the table. What we were finding when in the early days of ag tech investing, there were a lot of needs, and the demand was not well organized, and neither was the development of new ideas and how to get to market. And there was that deadly valley of death between the notion and commercialization. So the fund, as it turns out, was looking for a lot of ideas that were in white space, or at least white space in terms of getting good ideas from researchers and innovators to the fore. So what we did was we created sort of 3 types of work around this. So I'll describe each of them briefly. The first we call open innovation. And so those are commonly known as a challenge. And we identify a white space. And for those, we need a sponsor, an interested party, because we cannot use limited partners money that's in the equity side. But we find sponsors and we define what we're looking for, and then we broadcast through our global network and bring to the table a really diverse array of ideas. And then we select a short, usually 6 or 8, run them through a development training program, a little mini incubator. And then there's a pitch time and a drum roll and prizes. But really, the important part is many of those companies get seen by investors, and it's a really effective process. So
tell us some of the topics that you've had for these open innovation challenges.
Sure, they're quite broad. Probably the most entertaining one was manure. What to do with a world of poop. And so there were a lot of ideas, and the ideas come from every continent, and some of the winners were regenerative things, and some of them were to create biodegradable flower pots. I mean, so it can be quite practical and quite broad. We've also done several projects with the various aspects of the soy opportunity. Being in the Midwest, soy is a big deal, and the soy community is headquartered in St. Louis, so that was a logical one. We also did a global aquaculture challenge that personally I ran in collaboration with the Institute, so that the Institute and the regional organizations collaborate based on centers of interest, and so it's quite diverse.
And so do you have one going on now, or do you have one coming up?
The winners of one of the soy has just been announced, And off the record, we are developing one for dairy.
And are they once a year, or, if people want to plug into them, how do they figure out when to look for it?
Um, Actually, um, what we do is we look for collaborators who have an interest area, because what we bring to the table is a little bit of a know-how in organizing these things. They're not rocket science necessarily, but there's some know-how to getting them done. But we also have the global network that works in two ways. One is getting the word out, so that you end up putting the invitation in front of smart people everywhere. And then the second part is identifying subject matter experts to help us with the selection and shortlisting and ultimately mentoring of these companies. And in that regard, we work very readily with organizations such as in the Five Legs community. And we also, for instance, we've got conversations going on with some co-ops and some universities to develop programs, largely because there are a lot of orphan issues, right? The High Plains needs soil science, where the world is dedicated, or it tends to be focusing on Midwest, but not on the plains. And so there are open spaces where we can identify the topics that need to be addressed.
I should say, following this program, we will send a contact list out to everyone who has participated. So you'll know how to get a hold of Larry if you have more follow-up questions. And if you have questions as we're talking, please send them to me in the chat, and I'd be happy to, accommodate that or pull you into the conversation.
And there's examples published on the Yield Lab Institute's website about the challenges and also some of the thought leadership work we have done and some of the global networking work we've done.
Yeah, I want to talk about the thought leadership, but let's also say when companies participate in these innovation challenges, you mentioned they get the mentoring, they also get prizes, and you've distributed about 2.6 million of prizes over the years.
And the prizes come in several different types. The first is everybody would like to, the sizzle is in the cash amount, but really the more important, I believe, is the one-on-one mentoring with subject matter experts who have 20, 30 years of experience in their particular industry. That degree of connectivity with the real market is invaluable. We've also usually attracted some in-kind sponsors. And for instance, like IBM Research provided us $1 million worth of consulting that's for the aquaculture winners in aggregate. So there's sometimes the in-kind is of greater impact than cash.
And you also kind of get the attention of Yield Lab and other venture capitalists as you're going through this process, I assume.
That's correct. We always have a demo day type expo thing, and with thanks to COVID, we've all now learned how to do these things globally and quite efficiently. So yes, all of these winners, so to speak, the candidates, get in front of investor class globally. So
you mentioned thought leadership. Tell us kind of how you affect that.
So there are, again, this is identifying spaces that need effort and that are underserved, and we select them. Can't do too many because they take a lot of bandwidth. But for instance, we identified that controlled environment agriculture is a hot topic, but it is probably misunderstood, particularly from a point of view of plant genetics and also from a point of view of business models. There are plenty of organizations and areas where there's good work going on, so we didn't want to recreate something. So we did a study to figure out, all right, how can St. Louis's uh, uh, capability in the plant science create a role for St. Louis to the region to participate in the controlled environment agriculture industry. And so that has just been wrapped up. And we had a near miss, and we were working on another to attract an operator of a controlled environment agriculture farm. But what's interesting is when you stop and think about uh, implementing newish technologies, there are a lot of components that need to be thought about in addition to just that element of it. So, for instance, the workforce development side of the issue becomes an important one. And so we have worked broadly across the community to integrate workforce development thinking into the planning. So that kind of thought leadership is the sort of how to have a holistic view and trying to make a new industry successful.
When you talk about controlled environment ag, are you talking about growing plants in buildings or more than that?
More than that, although a business has to be financially sustainable. So yes, it starts out with salads, but ultimately it needs to go on to other things. So biopharma and animal fodder, and it can go as broad as you like. Mycelium is a new wave. So anything, and it comes by multiple names. There are economic development folks who like to think of this as a urban farming, so they're trying to support the economy of and nutrition of an urban area. And the social side of the community is looking for employment, and the academia is looking for applications for their career young scientists. So yeah, lots of parts.
Yield Lab Institute has so many different activities. You also you host a global Ag Fest. Can you tell us about that? How it happens, what kind of topics it covers?
So what we try to do is to, and again, this is not necessarily always every year. It's been there's been three, and in the history, so since 2015. And so what we've done is that these young companies will have an impact on their home market, but they also fit into multiple other markets. And so just by the convenience of the Yield Lab having locations on every continent, what we've done is to create like a demo day, but be global. And so that it gets technologies from one region under the nose of potential investors or collaborators in other geographies that they wouldn't necessarily get to.
And so startups would apply to pitch at this Global Ag Fest demo day.
Realistically, we are mostly pitching our own portfolio companies, but that's an interesting concept. All right, open the door, why not?
Okay, so we've got a new idea. And is there one of those coming up?
It's not scheduled, no. What we're also moving, one of the issues in new ag technology is investing, getting to educate the investor class. So one of the things we're thinking about now is how to create this kind of global thinking, how to bring more people to the table to understand investing in agriculture so that they become more comfortable with it. We need more investments in the seed stage.
I've got a question from someone, but I want to ask one more before I ask that. Just about your Groundbreakers program. There you give grants of up to $10,000 or more to ag tech innovators. Can you talk about that?
Sure. This was a rendition of the challenge concept. So again, the notion isn't different. It's who's the client. In this case, we go to specific clients who are interested in specific targeted identification of new solutions to their own strategic questions. And so it's sort of on-demand service, and we're happy to do that with collaborators anywhere that say, all right, we're looking for this, and we've got one right now. We're designing around biologicals, so that if we identify a specific interest in a specific, we call it client. I mean, it's so that we're working towards some specific target, but we can do those quite readily, and Groundbreakers was one of those.
And how do people find out about that? How is that publicized?
So those are ad hoc, because when they are published, or when they are designed, then we go out through our network, and probably the easiest way for communications, first of all, anybody's welcome to contact me or Brandon Day at the Yield Lab. He's the COO of the Institute. But also the Yield Lab Institute has a newsletter that comes out every Friday afternoon, and those are published and promoted in the newsletter.
And we've got a question from Anna at Sofanova. She's asking, and Anna, if you want to come and ask it, I'd be happy to pull you in, but you'd have to show yourself, because I can only pull in people who show themselves. So let me know if you want to, but otherwise I'll start asking the question. What kind of technology scale up support, like coaching facilities, equipment, does the Yield Lab Institute provide?
So the Yield Lab Institute, while we have an office inside an ag tech incubator in St. Louis, it's called the Helix Center. That facility has access to rental lab sort of facilities. It's the co-working space of ag tech, right? And so for companies who would like to physically participate, that's available. It's not necessarily owned and operated by the Institute. It's through relationships that we're happy to facilitate. But other than that, our support is virtual, and that allows us great flexibility, because each one of the verticals that we choose to dive into is quite different from the last one. So we just go wherever is appropriate for the technologies.
And that coaching, do the mentors come from Yield Lab, or how are all over?
So all over, and we are unabashed by it's the Pied Piper approach. We ask people favors, unpaid, and what's fascinating about the global agricultural community is that everyone wants to help somebody else with their new thing, and the trick is identifying who is it that has that specific knowledge and pair them up with these companies. And when Yield Lab Asia Pacific started, we knew that there was no way that the solution for a Bangalore technology was going to have a mentor from Bangalore. I mean, and so what we ended up, we knew that we were going to do this thing virtually, and that's the way it's played out, and it works. Their people are happy to help, and so that means that we can pull from a pool of global resources in this mentoring approach.
One more question. You've had so much experience over the years. You've seen so many ag tech startups. What kind of advice do you have for ag tech entrepreneurs?
So right now, and I thought that the conversation at the Rethink conference in San Francisco this last March was very brutally honest, and we'd asked them to do that because the investors need to have a clear understanding, why eyes wide open. And so the first thing is go get all the free help you can get. Go through as many of these boot camps, startup incubators. You get all the help you can get, and I think that there's no once and done. So I really recommend that. On a related note, I think that it's very important to connect with the actual ultimate end users of your product. Sounds simplistic, but you'd be surprised. So many people come up with a lab logical solution, but not a field logical solution. And And it's funny in Monsanto when I made the transition from a commercial person to an R&D community in Monsanto, and just in a career step there. And there were 650 PH scientists in R&D and me. And it was a cross-cultural experience for me, and of which I've had many. But so what Monsanto ended up doing to get things done was they created a middle kind of organization which had permission to talk to the commercial people and to the science people, and they call that product development. It's not a new concept, but I think that kind of thinking that bridges the lab to the field is mission critical to a startup idea. So those are two key ones. I think another one that's just financial is to just brutally keep your costs down. In the run up up through the 2019, 20, 21, 22, there was a rapid growth in investment in ag tech, and I think that there was an inflation in the valuations, and I think the bubble has burst, and so you have to be quite realistic about how much value is out there. The good news is that investing in the early stage has stayed level in terms of the number of deals. A, B, C, D, those deals have shrunk. The number of deals and the check per deal have shrunk, but seed stage has hung in there. So that's good news in the investment environment.
Thank you so much, Larry. We're going to pick up with that theme, that investment theme, with our next speaker. And just want to let everyone know, I think Larry